for life. One step beyond.
That's fantastic. Was that Jasper Donat and his new single? That sounds like Jasper. That word there, very, very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon we kick off after lunch with a very, very interesting panel, and one that is really going to look at how companies take their content and their product and their platforms and their technologies and then migrate them into other screens and other territories on a global basis. So I'd like to introduce our panel to you here. And first of all, ladies first, Wendy Hogan, who's based here in Singapore. And Wendy is with CBS Interactive, has been with them for a decade and has been responsible for developing a lot of their product lines, including CNET, ZDNet, GameSpot Asia, and a number of others. So please give Wendy a warm round of Singapore applause, please. Very nice. Sitting next to Wendy, Michael Schneider, who is the founder and CEO of Mobile Roadie. Michael is one of the world's great specialists in devising best creative applications, finding ways in which they can work effectively for your company, your product, your platform. And he's made some groundbreaking moves, not only in the United States, but is one of the few technology executives that makes a point of coming to Asia, developing strong business in Asia. So please give Michael a nice warm round of applause, all the way from Los Angeles. On my right, your right, my left, very pleased to welcome the CEO of Singtel Digital Media, Cheng Chuan Lu. Lu, very nice to have you here. Give Lu a big round of applause. Singtel, an important company. Those of you who are not too familiar with Singtel, interesting to note, Singtel own 100% of Optus, the Australian carrier, and they also are very significantly involved with Bharti Airtel, own 32% of Bharti. A very important company, and he's got some really interesting stuff to tell us today. So Lou, very nice to have you here. Sitting next to Lou is someone who's come all the way from India, but a very special place in India, Kerala. Any of you here been to Kerala before? Yes, one person. Fantastic place. Kerala, beautiful, lots of coconuts, beaches, technology.
Oh yes, a lot of IT too.
A lot of IT too, exactly. And so Andreen Mendez. Andreen, wonderful to welcome you here. First time to Digital Matters, and it's good to have you here from Kerala. Always very good to have somebody from India. India, very, very important in the whole world of cross-media.
Okay.
And last, but by very no means least, from London, so we've got quite an international panel, we have Fu Truong, who is the Vice President of Commercial and Operations for Asia Pacific of BBC.com. Fu, welcome here. First time here at Digital Matters.
Absolutely.
And very interesting stories you've got to tell, which we're going to come to in just a moment. So we've got a very interesting group that looks at a range of different ways in which you can take content and migrate it to the different screens. And one of the things that is now becoming evident for all of you here in the audience today is we are all screenagers. Wouldn't you agree? Because our lives are dominated by screens. So Lou, you're in a very interesting position, CEO of Singtel Digital Media, but you look after two very interesting areas because you are responsible for the whole area of being a cool hunter. You hunting for cool technology,
yes,
and wild technology.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the name of that company that looks for that particular kind of technology?
Okay, so maybe I'll just introduce myself a little bit. My name is Lou. In my day job, I actually take care of two companies, but the one that I'm probably more interested to talk about at this point in time is the Singtel Idea Factory, which main job is to go around the world hunting for cool and wild technologies. Some people say that my job is best in the world because I do nothing but go out looking for exciting technologies and good food and do nothing else. So in my job, we actually cover Silicon Valley, Israel, the Scandinavia region, and China.
And this is for this company called the Idea Factory?
Yes, this is for Idea Factory. So in this job, we actually hunt out thousands of companies and pick the best of the breed bring them to Asia, okay, to work with Singtel.
So give us an example of just something like that.
For example, we just launched this game service called Playcast. Escape, which is a company called Playcast. Anyone of you familiar with the game company called OnLive? OnLive? Yes? So OnLive, we actually approached them 2 years ago. They didn't want to come to Asia. So we approached one of their competitors in Israel, and we brought the company called Playcast to Singapore. And we've launched this game service in the cloud, whereby you can play console games without consoles. So you can play 3D games.
How do you do that?
Well, we use a streaming technology. We host the game in the servers and the data centers so that people can just play from the home with light PCs and small boxes, and we can play them on a TV on a PC. So this is an example of exciting technologies that we bring, first in Singapore, first in Asia, that we have launched it in an exciting way.
So you're in an interesting position because you've got a lock on Australia because of your linkage with Optus, and you're also responsible for a number of different product categories, e-books, e-mags. You're even launching a Netflix type of platform here in Singapore. And all of these things that you do are also geared to go to the international markets that Singtel points to.
Sure. The Singtel approach is generally that Singapore and Australia, our developed markets, are ready to try on a lot of things. Singapore, we're in a fortunate position that we are small. So anything goes wrong, is just 1 million customers. Suppose we launch in Indonesia, something goes wrong, 100 million customers will be hit. Can you imagine the scale of it? So we normally would experiment and do things in a more developed market where bandwidths are huge and the amount of smartphones is really a lot. So these are the places where we try out new and cool out things. Okay? And when they're ready and we're more tried and tested, we can bring them to some of our associates.
Very interesting. We've got some other questions to probe you on shortly, but Wendy, let's turn over to you. CBS Interactive, part of the CBS media machine in the United States, but more particularly, you started off with CDNet, and CDNet was acquired by CBS Interactive, and in fact, almost 3 years to the day, CBS Interactive also acquired Last.fm, which is another one of their products. Tell us about GameSpot Asia, because you launched that last year here in Asia. Give us some kind of idea of what led up to that and what the results were of that in terms of its initial launch some 5-6 months later.
Generally, what we've learned being an old school new media company is the old way of doing things was very print-led, where you launched products in a market and you had standalone products in each market. For English language products now, similar to the BBC actually, we look at the audiences that we drive to our English language products and how we capitalize on those audiences. So we had over 3 million gamers from the Asia region visiting GameSpot every month. So rather than launching a GameSpot Asia, which would have really just been a competitor to GameSpot and it would have lost, quite frankly, we build a local content layer on top of the existing GameSpot and kind of IP detect where the audience is coming from and present them with a localized locally programmed front door, that editorial program, and obviously localized advertising for the market. And then the next challenge is how do we apply that same concept off the PC to all the other screens that people are viewing GameSpot from.
So in addition to GameSpot, you also have ZDNet or ZDNet, it's sometimes called in America.
Yes.
Tell us the differential between CNET, ZDNet, ZDNet. Give us an idea of how you tackle those two disparate markets.
Internationally, we differentiate CNET and ZDNet in that CNET is technology reviews for the everyday person, so it's consumer electronics, games, and technology you use in your lifestyle, and ZDNet is information for people who work in technology.
What kind of audience do you have for those two platforms?
CNET is for the everyday consumer, especially.
But what numbers? How many million? How many
hundred? Across Asia, we have about 3 million, I think, including Australia, and then obviously we have CNET in China as well. Although our big consumer electronics brands in China are actually Fengniao and PC Home and ZOL, so a bit different to our English language brands.
So are you finding that in your focus on Asia, you are now taking these particular platforms? Do you then make sure that they appear in the local languages? Like, for example, in China, it's all Mandarin and directed to the emerging technology audience in China.
We have a separate business in China that runs the Chinese business, and so I'm responsible for English language Asia.
Yep.
We have CBSI in China that we have over 1,000 staff that publish all the content in Mandarin. And then we have a licensee joint venture partner in Asahi Interactive in Japan, and we have another licensee joint venture partner in Korea.
So give us some sense over the next 3 to 6 months, some of the key new directions or ideas or things that you are chasing now, working on, that you are hoping to launch in Asia over the next 90 to 180 days.
I think the big thing for us is the whole content of this panel, and something I was very interested to talk to Michael about is how you produce content for consumption across screens as opposed to for consumption on the PC. So we know that our audience are accessing our content from a very small size screen right up to, we've been working with some of the TV manufacturers to deliver our content through IPTV as an app.
As a preload on the TV screen?
Yes, that's right. And so how you interact with the content and how you actually publish content for a 50-inch screen as opposed to a 3-inch screen is very different. And where some information, it's great to be text-driven, in other environments it's better to be video-driven. And then whether you produce native applications for all of those screens or whether you produce adaptable, what we call an adaptive framework or adaptive layout so that the actual content adapts depending on what device you're on. That's the kind of challenge that, you know, obviously there's a lot of, in native applications, there's a lot of development time required, and how do you just make it seamless, which I think YouTube do really well, you know, for example, like how do you just make it easy to consume no matter what device the reader is looking at it on.
Okay, Michael, here's an interesting challenge for you. Mobile Roadie, you're the premier apps maker in the world, I think, at any rate, certainly one of the very, very best. Wendy's got an issue. She's trying to get across screens. Lou has got an issue. He believes in the 5th screen, which we'll talk about shortly. What advice can you give to Wendy about what should someone do? Here she is with this very important properties, CDNet, ZDNet, GameSpot Asia. What would you suggest?
Sure. Well, we see a lot, for example, in the TV world and other broadcast world where people, the most popular, the most conversation that's happening is on Facebook, which is a shame because you don't own Facebook, you don't control it. And so, you know, getting in the market is the biggest thing, and getting out there. People are searching for apps, whether you have one or not is another story, or whether you have an official one or unofficial one. For any popular brand on TV, radio, entertainment, there's going to be 20 unofficial apps and hopefully at least one official app. But getting in the game is a start, and curating that conversation. I used this example in a talk a few months ago of Sex and the City, very popular show in the U.S. And
everywhere, worldwide.
Okay, I don't take that for granted. And you know, HBO has their Sex and the City websites where they have a bulletin board, but it's a ghost town, and they have their store selling merchandise, and they collect email addresses. But those fans are not going to HBO.com while they're watching that show. They're sitting on their couch, they're sitting in a friend's house, but they may have their iPad or certainly their smartphone with them. And so it's really a no-brainer, and you know, this isn't a plug on Mobile Roadie. There's many, many different platforms you can use to have a really great mobile experience in a native app without spending a lot of money and without spending a lot of time. In my experience, big companies tend to overcomplicate apps in general, and it doesn't need to be a 6-month development process, an RFP, and all that good stuff.
Michael, 2 questions. First of all, what's the turnaround time for doing a really good app? And secondly, give us some examples of what you've been doing with sports, because that ties in with television as well, and looks at a way that you take sport and migrate them to other screens.
Sure. Well, on our system, you could turn around a fantastic app in a week. And there's
in
other
a week?
systems in a week.
Complicated in a week?
Very simple to create, very sophisticated for the end user.
And that's because your team know what they're doing?
Yeah, well, it's because we have a team of 30 that spends nothing, they spend all their time developing the system and making it very, very simple to create a very sophisticated mobile experience. With sports teams, it's really fascinating. I mean, our #1 app in the world is Taylor Swift. She's got 1 million fans, and it's only available in the US, which is a shame, but 1 million downloads, and these fans, every 10 to 15 seconds, are posting and commenting, and they're fanatic. with sports teams, we found the same thing. And people...
Now, with the sports teams, did you have a link with the TV network that had the sports team, or are you working directly with the sports team?
Working directly with the team, and what they're doing is they're using Ustream or Livestream, doing live video interviews with coaches and players both before and after the game. They're broadcasting to their app. But these fans...
So you would devise the app first, and that app then becomes the gateway for all of the other collateral activity.
That's right. And rather than having an intermediary, a distributor in the way, the team can actually talk to fans directly. It's the big difference.
And so the key is to get that engagement. It's exactly what Wendy was talking about. It's what Lou is talking about with what you're doing, for example, here in Singapore with InSing, local interests, local stuff. And you will be able to turn these around in non-English language as well?
Yeah. We currently support 9 different languages, including Mandarin. And it takes us about a day to add another language, so it's not challenging to add them.
Very, very good. So, Fu, let's come to you. BBC, obviously venerable institution, tremendous coverage worldwide. The BBC World Service been a staple in Asia for many, many years. Your role is to take BBC productions and content and then internationalize it into Asia. So one of the things that's been a huge success in the UK is what the BBC call their iPlayer. And the iPlayer allows you, if you live in the UK, to download any BBC program that you've seen in the last 7 days, and you could basically have access to that programming without any charge, because in the UK the BBC imposes the license on everyone who lives in the UK. What are you doing with iPlayer, or are you doing anything with iPlayer internationally? It's been so successful in the UK.
It has been. We've been very lucky that the iPlayer has gone so well. And it's actually given us a new platform and a new project to kind of test out how far we can take these things. You know, most of what we do outside the UK, most what people know us for is really about news. It's really about late breaking news. It's really about features. It's really about analysis. And when you have that kind of stuff, you really can't predict how news is going to go and how you take that content and distribute it properly and very, very, very quickly as well. So what the iPlayer does is, because it's not news and because it's entertainment, the BBC's background is really making, you know, drama, comedy, documentaries, all those brilliant things. And the BBC licensed some of that stuff out to other broadcasters around the world. In Asia, what we're hoping to do soon is that we're going to launch iPlayer, a global iPlayer this year, this summer. And right now we haven't decided on a date yet, because it's a little bit complex in terms of all the rights and licensing issues from all around the different countries. But one of the things that
that would be a mess. There's some lawyers here in the audience, particularly some from Haldane's in Hong Kong, that would love to be able to tackle a mess like that.
Absolutely. It is a little bit of a mess. And so what we're trying to do is clear that up and launch it out. But you know, the idea is that it becomes an entertainment platform. And I think if we get it right, and I hope that we do, is that it's going to be one of the truly first VOD systems that crosses borders. You know, as we know, all of VOD is usually within one country.
Correct.
To go across borders, across lots of different territories, is what we want to do, and that's the whole point, right?
So, for example, a well-known BBC program like Top Gear that has such a big following in Australia, this would be something that you would want to try and encourage to migrate into other Asian markets.
That's the idea. That's the idea, certainly. And then there's Top Gear, there's Doctor Who, there's also Lonely Planet that we bought.
Lonely Planet, of course, that's right. Absolutely. The publisher is now owned by the BBC.
Yeah.
What happened with the recent wedding, Prince William and the Duchess of Cambridge, who she now is? What did you do with that massive broadcast, which reached so many million people around the world? Is that an example of what the BBC does by migrating a major documentary event like that?
It is. We were very lucky. In a way, the royal wedding was a gift to us, because normally we don't have time to actually take that kind of content and put it out there, let alone really positive content around the news, right? And so we were able to do that and put on live streaming on the web, obviously, on our iPhone app, our BlackBerry app, our iPad app. We were able to sell DVDs around it. We had Facebook pages and Twitter feeds, and so we use it as a little bit of a case study, because we knew we had time to do that, and now it kind of gives us a template to actually do future things on it, which was brilliant.
So this could be future big events, the Olympics next year. Absolutely. And so forth.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a dress rehearsal for all that.
So Fu, what are your key target territories in your planning for Asia? How do you actually make up the calculus of what you do from a programming and implementation point of view?
It's a really good question, actually. The largest markets for us, naturally, are Australia and India. They're just two really big markets for us, so we can't ignore them in any way.
And English speaking, of course. So
and English speaking and old colonial countries and the whole thing. But obviously, we're looking at the emerging markets like Malaysia and Indonesia and Vietnam, and the big commercial markets like Hong Kong and Singapore need to be catered for too.
Now, BBC have had enormous success in Bangladesh with BBC Radio Janata, or BBC Janata, which taught Bangladeshis how to speak English. Is this also an extension of your programming in a sense, where you can look at English language learning through the prism of programming? Is that something that you're going to be focusing on as well?
I think it wouldn't be a focus, but I think it'd be silly not to take advantage of it. I mean, BBC produces 33 different languages all around the world. That's a lot of languages, and there are very few companies who have that kind of scope to be able to do that. And so if we can marry the two, the world service, between what we're doing with English language, then I think we've got a pretty strong proposition. And so it's work in progress.
And you soon to be moving to Singapore from London?
I am. I'm moving in. I'm relocating here in 3 weeks' time.
So, ladies, if any of you have got some good tips for him about what he should do when he moves to Singapore, you can check out with him at tea time afterwards. Something interesting. And now, let's ask Andreen. Andreen Mendez, you come from Kerala,
Yes.
and you took up a very interesting position. You've watched television, but at the beginning of this year, you decided that what you were going to do is you were going to start your own TV network, but one that would be created and run by your viewers,
Yep.
which is what your company India Vibe
Is doing.
is.
Yes.
So tell us how you came to that idea and what made you decide to do it.
I mean, we've been talking about how linear content can transform to the future generation, where we talk about multiple screens. But what I see the solution for all this problem is right there. It is in the content. I mean, finally, you hear it right. Content is the king. So the whole point being, whatever we are doing, we just need to involve the users in it, and that's the key. You know, you might have a serial, you might have a news going on, or you might have a college program, or a youth, or a music program going on. But the idea is, even if the user is going to switch channels, or even if the user is going to switch screens to an iPad or probably to a game station, you know, you need to see ways by which we can integrate those content. So that is where India Vibes was born. We saw that in India, in a market like India, especially there's a lot of content that's being circulated. I mean, let's not just talk about India as a whole. There's a lot of content that's being circulated in these social networks. So the prime idea was to combine all that content, you know, likewise I would say it's a combination of YouTube plus our own packing, plus the way we survive with our own ads put into it, and user content, voila, you have your India Vibes. So the whole idea was to get content from users, package it in our own manner, and put it. So it's not a public hosting services. We are going to take content from users, we're going to pack it and put it out there.
So this is kind of like a wiki TV network that you're developing yourself. So after 130 days that you've been operating, obviously it's the first phase of the company, what are you seeing? Any measurable trend lines that you can tell us about?
As far as the users is connected, you know, there has been a lot of excitement in this space, web TV in general. But the most important challenge has been the vernacular content, because, you know, in a market like Asia or in a market like India, you know, there is very less people who prefer English as a language. So the challenge has been to create vernacular content or regional content for that matter. So it didn't make sense for us to have a studio or an office in every other city and have content done from there. So the ratio was 60-40. You know, you get content in a ratio of 60 from users, and that, when I say users, it can be of different languages, different cultures, package it up, and that's where our 40% comes in. So that was the whole idea, because there is a need of vernacular content out there, especially in Asian markets. So we just thought this is the best way to adapt to it.
So Lou, let's go back to you. You have 400 million broadband users in the Singtel system and network. Mobile. 400 million?
Yes.
That's a lot.
That's very lot. Imagine Singapore is only 5 million. And the Singtel associates altogether combined, we've just breached 400 million mobile customers.
400 million.
I don't think Singapore would ever reach anywhere close if everybody will be starting to reproduce themselves.
Now, that is true. Well, the country worldwide that has the biggest penetration of mobile devices is Dubai, 2.3 devices per individual, which is quite high, in fact, higher than anywhere else in the world. But I was more interested in talking to you about this whole notion of an intelligent end-to-end service. Some might say it's telco 2.0. And I thought that I was also interested in this whole notion of the fifth screen, because we have television, we have the web, we have mobile,
Tablet.
and we have tablet. So what would the fifth screen be?
We have this notion that the world is used to call 3 screens, and suddenly the tablet came out. Then we start calling it the 4th screen. Now people start calling the end screen because they don't know what's coming out. But one screen that I do see coming out in a big and mega way in the world of Silicon Valley and Israel is many people are innovating now the car screen. The car screen that we look at
For sat-nav,
for cars. Okay, for
the satellite navigation screen?
not just that, you know, it's a screen where people put in a car where it will provide you not just navigation, it provide you in an app store inside, allow developers to put up applications. Imagine a Spotify, imagine a Pandora in a car, imagine local based advertising, imagine someone that's doing a Facebook or a tweet on you, and then it reads out to you. You can interact with the feed screen by speaking to it in a natural language processing. And you open up a whole new area of opportunity.
So Lou, what you need to do here at Digital Matters is you need to spend time with Ty Roberts, the founder of GraceNote, who has been developing quite a lot of that satellite navigation implementation with Ford and major motor manufacturers. And clearly, this is a logical extension of Singtel's digital fingerprinting.
Exactly.
Around
we have
the
been
world.
speaking to GraceNote. Yeah.
You
we
are?
are already speaking to GraceNote.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Many things are happening. I can't reveal that in the forum like this.
You can tell us. It's just the only people here that will hear it. So that
good
will be fun
things,
with that.
exciting
Good
things.
Very good.
Yeah, they're happening.
So, give us an idea of what you are planning in terms of going forward. You've got Spotify as part of your package of content offerings that you have.
It's a Spotify-like service. but
Spotify Lite.
We have a service called Amped. Right, this something like a Spotify. Again, because of rights issue.
Right.
You know, iTunes can't launch a music service here. Spotify is not here. We've launched our own service. On top of that, we are layering with our games, as I just mentioned, an on-live equivalent. We've launched our e-magazine as well, where we focus on hyper-local magazines. We've launched our tabloid.
Yes, I want to ask you about that.
Sure.
Hyper-local, colloquial relevance is absolutely essential in mobile and migrating across the screens. So when you talk about hyper-local, are you talking about doing something hyper-local in each of the markets that you're in?
So we first provide a platform. It is not the platform that's hyper-local, it's the content that's hyper-local. So in the case of magazines, we have created a platform and allow work with content providers locally to bring their magazine and digitize them. So with the same platform, we can now move to Australia, and then Australian magazines can localize them as well. Yeah, does that answer the question?
So, for example, I've noticed in Singapore there doesn't appear to be a tabloid newspaper.
Yep.
What would you suggest as a solution to trying to satisfy that niche in the marketplace? Because people love tabloid news,
Yeah,
quick,
I do.
easy read. Did you think of that when you were?
Yes, we do. So tabloid news is an area where we are very excited in, because right now in Singapore, for example, the mainstream news are pretty serious news. GDP grow by 5% a year, the kind of news.
Singapore Inc.
In Singapore. So with Straits Times is in that space. In the tabloid news, only the Chinese papers have something. So we saw that as an opportunity. So we worked with the Chinese paper site, and we got their content, their content, and we actually translate them into English and launched tabloid online news. And straight away, there was a major hit right now in Singapore through InSync.
What would you call a hit in Singapore with a 5 million population for example, that tabloid news product?
So right now we have on InSync 1.5 million unique users.
Wow.
That's quite a lot, because Singapore online users about 3.5 million.
Wow.
We got probably a 40% of it. So that's, to my opinion, a pretty significant hit.
It's incredibly
Thank you.
significant.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So any other things you're looking at over the next 3 to 4 months that would be like that tabloid news story you
We're
told
looking
us?
into areas of e-books, e-shopping, and I think some of the other things are like harnessing the full power of our Facebook fan page to do something. InSync has one of the Singapore largest Facebook fan page. We have 90,000 fans.
Someone was telling me that of all of the Facebook users worldwide, the biggest per capita Facebook population is Malaysia.
Yes.
But Singapore must be close to Malaysia.
Well, it wasn't that much until the general election that just passed. The general election really changed the landscape of the earth. Really, we were in which is the portal that I run for Singtel, used to have the highest local portal. And right now, we've been overtaken by an opposition party pretty candidate. So we have 90,000 fans, she has 103. So you can see that such things are changing the landscape of how we interact. So just on our Facebook fan page, we get 5 million posting a month. It's amazing traffic.
Amazing traffic.
Yeah, amazing traffic.
So Wendy, this is hearing all of this and the way that Singtel are managing to migrate their content into different product forms. Michael, perhaps you'd like to chime in on this as well. Does this give you thoughts about how you can widen the basis of the product that you are putting out, where you can break it down into these areas that feed these micro audiences or micro levels of the audience?
Yeah, I think that we do try to do that, definitely. And then our challenge really is delivering it on different devices in different formats that work better for those devices.
Michael, what would you, after hearing what some of the panelists have said, if you are Dr. App, what can the doctor suggest?
Wow.
Give it to me, Doc.
Well, one of the things, and I don't think this is so much of an issue in Asia. You know, my country, the U.S., has an issue with tending to only look at the U.S. And I think one of the really cool things about mobile is it's so flexible. It's moving so fast, but it's so flexible in terms of translation, localization, like you were saying, being hyper-local. And so...
do you see that as well as an important factor in developing apps? Hyper-local? Colloquial relevance?
Absolutely. And, you know, we have people that have built apps in 6 languages in the same app, and it's not that hard. It takes a little bit extra effort. I hope that the U.S. would, U.S. startups would pay a little more attention outside the U.S. You know, we're kind of spoiled with a really big market that all speaks the same language, and it's easy to operate in. But especially with mobile, there's, you know, I was just in China 3 weeks ago, and the amount of mobile users in China and the small penetration of smartphones, which means that there's a whole growth curve coming up, is just mind-blowing.
Wendy, are you seeing same kind of view as Michael has been expressing? This is something that colors your business as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having a perspective on English language Asia and getting constant feedback from audiences on local language content and content about what's happening in their markets is something we preach back to the US constantly, because obviously there is a tendency for American companies to focus on America.
We had the #1 music app in Brazil last year, but there's a problem because in Brazil there's no iTunes Music Store, which actually isn't the case in most of Asia. And so figuring out other ways to monetize users outside of advertising, which sort of works here, and iTunes Music, which doesn't work here, is also becoming increasingly important.
We just buy American iTunes cards.
Okay, well, how many have a U.S. credit card to do that?
You don't? Oh, no, you buy the prepaid gift cards.
Prepaid gift cards.
You do? No, you don't.
Well, there's Q&A, so maybe we can talk about this.
Yeah.
We've got time for some questions from the floor. This is an important grouping of real specialists, so if there's anybody here that would like to pose a question or two, let's see if there's anybody here. Anybody like to? We have, yes, we've got a gentleman there. Can we get a mic to him? Tell us your name, where you're from, and here you go. Yes.
Hi, Prashun Das from The Economist, but earlier I've worked with CNBC and MTV as a strategist.
Half price ahead. Let's go.
So question to Mendes. Now, you come from a state which has historically some of the best content I've ever seen, particularly when it's going up.
Okay.
Now, your model I can understand, and it can be duplicated in other states like Tamil Nadu, Bengal, etc., which have strong things.
Okay.
But unfortunately, the broadband connectivity is not there. So a wide percentage of the audience who will be interested in that will not be able to get that.
So your question is?
How are you going to solve that problem? And the second thing, which I have lived, having lived internationally, is this model which the panelists have spoken about is ideal for ethnocentric content marketing. So if you live in a place like London, there are about 30 communities living in West London, East London. Now, it doesn't make economic sense to go about national network TV. But through this model, you can get that audience, and there's a business model at it.
Yeah.
So for your
Hyperlocal.
Hyperlocal. So for your case, for example, there's a strong Malu population in the Middle East, Malaysia, etc. So the demand for your business model is much higher in Southeast Asia, Middle East, than in your own country also.
Okay, so what do you say about that?
Yeah, the first thing is that we are not a Malayalam-based content because the whole channel.
Malayalam is the language of Kerala, for those who are not familiar with it.
Yeah, and we have named it India Vibes. So the idea being it should be the vibrations from India, which constitute a lot of languages. So we are not confined to one language or one region. That would be the first thing. Second thing, I would agree, there is a problem of broadband speed that is there. But the idea being, we're trying to develop content which deletes the normal quotient of having a feedback or a comment. I'm not expecting feedbacks or comment. I want users to feed me the content. And let's be specific, again in India, we have more than 100 million internet users. From that, almost 70% were watching online cricket when there was a World Cup. So that means I agree there is a very limited broadband usage, but we also know for a fact that there has been 1 million YouTube visits per day from mobile. So in a market like India, where internet is mostly driven from mobile devices, speed is an issue, but I would still have a say that government agencies to take a note on the technology part. But otherwise, the prime idea is we want the content to be more than just comments or feedback. So
no, it's more than just feedback. What you're offering is a brilliant communication channel, advertising, corporate, various forms of communication channel.
Yeah.
And if you're offering other languages,
yeah.
Tamil, Bengali,
yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
We agree with that. We agree with that. We are hyperlocal freaks.
Yeah, yeah.
That is for sure.
Huge scope, because there are a hell of a lot of...
Thank you, sir. Let's go to the next question. One more question, final question. We're running a little short of time. Thank you very much. We didn't mean to cut you off there, but no more? No ladies asking any questions? I can't believe it. Jasper.
I guess the lunch must be in heavy.
Well, what we tried to do in this very brief short time, and I would really encourage you to buttonhole each of these panelists to talk about this whole notion of both hyperlocal and also the way that applications can be developed. Thank you very, very much. We'd like to thank Fu, and we would like to thank Lou, and we'd like to thank Wendy, and Michael, and Andreen. Ladies and gentlemen, please give our panel a very big round of applause. My name is Ralph Simon. Thank you for listening, and we now hand you back to...